The crystal chandelier cast golden light across the dining room, but nobody noticed the storm about to break. Sophia wiped down table 7 with practiced precision, her elegant bun catching the warm glow of the restaurant's ambient lighting. The evening rush at Belmont's had been relentless. Wealthy patrons filled every corner of the establishment, their laughter and conversation creating a symphony of privilege she'd grown accustomed to over the years. She was exhausted, but satisfied. After years of sacrifice, after postponing her dreams to care for her aging grandparents, she'd finally done it. The diploma in her small apartment proved it. Sophia Chen had become Sophia Bennett, culinary school graduate. At 32, she was ready to transform her life. But first, she had tables to clear. That's when she noticed them. The couple at table 12 commanded attention without effort. The man, tall, imposing, with dark brown hair styled to perfection, exuded the kind of confidence that comes from never hearing the word no. His tailored suit probably cost more than Sophia's entire year of rent. Beside him sat a woman in a vibrant purple dress, her beauty as sharp as the dismissive glances she threw at passing servers. But it was the elderly woman across from them who caught Sophia's eye. The older lady, perhaps 69, wore elegance like a second skin. Her silver hair was styled in a classic updo, her posture impeccable despite her age. Everything about her whispered old money. Genuine class, the kind that can't be bought, only inherited through generations of grace. Sophia watched as the man, James, she'd heard the hostess call him, leaned toward his mother with obvious affection. The contrast was striking. This reserved, almost arrogant billionaire transformed completely in his mother's presence, his stern features softening into something almost human. The girlfriend, however, maintained her mask of polished indifference. Sophia moved closer, ostensibly to clear the neighboring table, but something made her pause. Years of waitressing had taught her to read rooms, to sense when the atmosphere shifted from pleasant to dangerous. And right now, something felt wrong. James stood abruptly, his attention caught by someone across the room. "Mother, Victoria. I'll be just a moment. Senator Williams is here. I need to say hello." His mother nodded graciously. Victoria smiled, but the warmth never reached her eyes. The moment James stepped away, the transformation was instantaneous. Victoria's perfect smile collapsed into a sneer of pure contempt. She turned toward the elderly woman with an expression that made Sophia's blood run cold. Finally, Victoria muttered, her voice dripping with venom. "Do you have any idea how exhausting it is pretending to care about your boring stories?" The older woman's face went pale. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't play innocent, Eleanor." Victoria leaned forward, her purple dress catching the light like a warning signal. "You sit there with your proper manners and your family values, judging everyone around you. See the way you look at me." Sophia froze, her cloth hovering over the table surface. She shouldn't be hearing this. But she couldn't move away. Eleanor's voice trembled slightly. "Victoria, I've never—" "Save it." The younger woman's laugh was cruel, calculated. "You think you're so special because you raised a billionaire son? You're just an old woman clinging to relevance through someone else's success. James keeps you around out of obligation, nothing more." The words landed like physical blows. Sophia felt her hands clench around the cloth. Every instinct screamed at her to intervene. But she was just a waitress. These were wealthy, powerful people. Who was she to insert herself into their private drama? But then she remembered her grandmother's words, spoken during those long years of caregiving. "Sophia, baby. True character isn't shown in how we treat equals. It's revealed in how we treat those who can't fight back." Eleanor sat frozen, her elegant composure cracking. A single tear traced down her weathered cheek. That tear decided everything. Sophia straightened, her decision made. She'd spent her entire life taking care of vulnerable people, her grandparents, her younger cousins, the homeless veteran who came to the restaurant every Thursday for the meal she secretly paid for herself. She wasn't about to stop now. Setting down her cloth with deliberate care, Sophia took 3 steps toward table 12. Her heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline flooding her system. But her voice came out steady, clear, and absolutely unshakable. "Excuse me," she said, her tone carrying across the ambient noise of the restaurant. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Victoria's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing with instant hostility. And who exactly are you? Sophia met her gaze without flinching. Someone who recognizes cruelty when she sees it. The surrounding tables fell silent. The storm had arrived. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand slammed against the table, rattling the expensive china. How dare you interrupt a private conversation? Sophia didn't retreat. Years of standing on her feet for 12-hour shifts had taught her endurance, and caring for her dying grandfather had taught her courage. This woman's anger was nothing compared to real pain. Private? Sophia's voice remained calm, controlled. You're in a public restaurant, speaking loud enough for half the room to hear. There's nothing private about publicly humiliating an elderly woman. Eleanor looked up at Sophia with shock, and something else. Hope, perhaps, or disbelief that someone would defend her. Victoria rose from her chair, her purple dress swirling dramatically. Do you have any idea who I am? Who we are? I know exactly who you are. Sophia's tone carried an edge now, sharp and precise. You're someone who thinks wealth excuses cruelty. Someone who pretends to be kind when it benefits you, then shows your true nature the moment you think nobody's watching. A crowd was forming. Other diners had abandoned their meals to witness the confrontation. The restaurant manager hovered near the kitchen entrance, clearly torn between protecting his staff and avoiding conflict with wealthy patrons. Victoria's face flushed with rage. You're a waitress, a nobody. You have no right to speak to me this way. And you have no right to speak to her the way you did. Sophia gestured toward Eleanor. That woman has shown nothing but grace since she arrived. She doesn't deserve your contempt. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know what I heard. Sophia's voice dropped lower, more intense. I heard you call her boring. Tell her she's clinging to relevance. Suggest that her own son only tolerates her out of obligation. Those aren't the words of someone in a relationship. Those are the words of a bully. The surrounding guests murmured their agreement. Several women nodded, their expressions shifting to solidarity. Victoria sensed the room turning against her. Her strategy shifted instantly, from aggression to victimhood. This is ridiculous. Eleanor, tell her. Tell this person that we were just having a normal conversation. But Eleanor had found her voice. No, the older woman said quietly, her dignity reasserting itself. We weren't having a disagreement, Victoria. You were attacking me. You've been attacking me for months. But only when James isn't watching. The revelation landed like thunder. Victoria's eyes widened. Eleanor, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? Eleanor stood now, her posture straight despite trembling hands. You've criticized my clothes, my opinions, my friends. You've made jokes about my age at every opportunity. You've treated me like an inconvenience, and I stayed silent because I thought James cared for you. Sophia felt her chest tighten. How many times had Eleanor endured this? How many cruel comments had she absorbed in silence? But you don't make him happy, Eleanor continued, her voice growing stronger. You make him uncomfortable. I see how tense he becomes around you, how he works longer hours to avoid coming home. Enough! Victoria's mask shattered completely. You jealous old woman. You can't stand that James chose me, that he built a life beyond your suffocating control. You want him dependent on you forever. Actually, a deep voice cut through the chaos. Those days were never happening. Every head turned. James stood 3 feet away, his expression carved from stone. His dark brown eyes blazed with fury mixed with something deeper. Betrayal, perhaps, or profound disappointment. How long had he been standing there? From the look on Victoria's face, long enough? The billionaire moved forward with predatory grace. He didn't look at Victoria. His attention was fixed entirely on his mother, scanning her face with obvious concern. Mother, he said softly, his voice transformed into something vulnerable. Is what she said true? Has Victoria been treating you this way? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. James, I didn't want to trouble you. That's not an answer. His jaw clenched. Has she been cruel to you? The silence stretched impossibly long. Then Eleanor nodded. James closed his eyes briefly as if absorbing a physical blow. When he opened them again, his gaze finally shifted to Victoria, and the temperature dropped 20 degrees. We're done, he said simply. Victoria laughed nervously. James, don't be ridiculous. Your mother is exaggerating. Get out. The two words carried absolute finality. Victoria's face cycled through expressions: shock, disbelief, rage, and finally, desperation. James, you can't be serious. We've been together for 8 months. 8 months of lies. His voice was ice. 8 months of you pretending to respect my mother while tearing her down behind my back. 8 months of me ignoring the signs because I convinced myself you were different. I am different. Victoria reached for his arm, but he stepped back smoothly, putting distance between them. James, please. Your mother misunderstood. We were just talking and things got a little heated. A little heated. Eleanor's voice trembled with suppressed emotion. You told me I was clinging to relevance, that James only kept me around out of obligation. Those weren't heated words, Victoria. Those were calculated cruelties. James turned to his mother, and Sophia watched something break in his carefully controlled expression. How long, Mother? How long have you been enduring this? Eleanor looked away, unable to meet her son's eyes. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. James moved closer to Eleanor, his hand gently touching her shoulder. You're the most important person in my life. You raised me alone after Dad died. You sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. And I repaid you by bringing someone into our lives who treated you like... He couldn't finish the sentence. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every patron, every server, every person in Belmont's watched the scene unfold with rapt attention. Some women were crying. Several men looked uncomfortable, as if witnessing something too intimate for public consumption. Victoria sensed her control slipping away entirely. She pivoted, her eyes landing on Sophia with sudden venom. This is your fault. You couldn't mind your own business. You had to play hero. She did what I should have done months ago. James interrupted, his tone sharp enough to cut. She saw cruelty and confronted it. She defended someone who couldn't defend herself. She showed more character in 5 minutes than you've shown in 8 months. Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected the billionaire to acknowledge her at all, much less praise her intervention. Victoria's desperation transformed into pure malice. Fine. You want to throw away what we have over some waitress playing white knight? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you've lost. What I've lost. James laughed, but the sound held no humor. Victoria, I never had you. I had a performance. A carefully crafted illusion designed to get close to my wealth and influence. The real you. The person who emerges when nobody's watching. That's who I'm seeing right now. He pulled his phone from his pocket with deliberate slowness. Harrison? Yes, it's James. I need you to arrange a car immediately. My guest is leaving. He paused, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. No, not for Mother and me. Just for Ms. Victoria. She won't be joining us for the remainder of the evening. Or any evening after this. The finality in his voice was absolute. Victoria stood frozen, her purple dress suddenly seeming garish under the restaurant's elegant lighting. Around them, whispers began to spread. People recognizing who James was, realizing they were witnessing the spectacular collapse of a high society relationship. You'll regret this, Victoria hissed, grabbing her designer purse from the chair. When you're alone again, cycling through meaningless relationships like you always do, you'll remember what you had with me. What I had with you, James said quietly, was a masterclass in deception. Consider it a lesson learned. A man in a black suit appeared at the entrance, Harrison, presumably, gesturing discreetly toward the door. Victoria looked around the restaurant one final time, perhaps hoping to find sympathy or support in the sea of faces. She found none. With a final glare at Sophia, Victoria turned on her heel and stalked toward the exit. Every eye followed her retreat, watching as she disappeared through the doors and out into the night. The moment she vanished, the restaurant exhaled collectively. James remained standing, his posture rigid. His jaw clenched so tight Sophia worried he might crack a tooth. Then, slowly, the tension drained from his shoulders. He turned to his mother and the transformation was remarkable. The cold billionaire disappeared, replaced by a son filled with regret. I'm so sorry, Mother, he whispered. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. Eleanor reached up, cupping her son's face with both hands. You're seeing it now. That's what matters. The moment stretched between them, intimate and raw. Then James straightened, composing himself with visible effort. He turned to face Sophia, and she suddenly felt very aware of her simple uniform, her worn shoes, the cloth still clutched in her hand. "You," he said, his dark brown eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I don't even know your name." Sophia swallowed hard. "Sophia. Sophia Bennett, Sophia." He tested the name as if memorizing it. "You intervened when nobody else would. You defended my mother at risk to your own job. Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Why indeed? Sophia looked at James, then at Eleanor, then back at the billionaire whose entire world had just shifted on its axis. The question deserved an honest answer. "Because," she said softly, "I know what it's like to watch someone you love be treated as invisible." James's expression shifted, curiosity replacing some of the residual anger. "Explain." Sophia set down her cloth on a nearby table, buying herself a moment to gather her thoughts. Around them, the restaurant's ambient noise had resumed, but their corner felt suspended in time. "I spent 7 years taking care of my grandparents. My grandfather had dementia, and my grandmother had a heart condition. I watched people treat them like they didn't matter anymore. Like being old meant being disposable." Eleanor's eyes glistened with fresh tears. "Nurses who spoke about them like they weren't in the room," Sophia continued, her voice steady despite the emotion underneath. "Doctors who addressed only me, never them directly. Strangers who showed impatience when my grandfather moved too slowly or forgot where he was." She met James's gaze directly. "I learned that the true measure of a person isn't how they treat equals. It's how they treat those who can't fight back. Your mother couldn't defend herself without risking your relationship." Someone needed to speak up. The silence that followed felt sacred somehow. James studied her with an intensity that made Sophia acutely aware of every detail. Her slightly worn uniform, the strand of hair that had escaped her elegant bun, the exhaustion she'd been carrying since her shift started 6 hours ago. "You postponed your own life to care for them," he said. It wasn't a question. It was recognition. "I postponed college," Sophia confirmed. "They raised me when my parents couldn't. It was my turn to take care of them. Family is an obligation. It's love." "And now?" Eleanor asked gently, stepping closer. "Your grandparents? They passed 2 years ago, within 3 months of each other." Sophia smiled despite the persistent ache in her chest. "But I kept my promise to them. I finished culinary school last month. They would have been so proud." James's expression softened in a way Sophia hadn't thought possible. This man, known for his ruthless business tactics, his cold negotiations, his revolving door of superficial relationships, looked at her with something approaching wonder. "Most people would have walked past our table," he said quietly, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "They would have pretended not to hear. They would have protected themselves instead of protecting a stranger. Your mother isn't a stranger anymore." Sophia glanced at Eleanor, who was watching their exchange with obvious fascination. "The moment I heard how she was being treated, she became someone worth defending." Eleanor stood, moving toward Sophia with surprising grace despite her age. Before Sophia could react, the older woman pulled her into an embrace that smelled of expensive perfume and genuine warmth. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered against her shoulder. "Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible." Sophia hugged her back, feeling the older woman's frame, delicate but strong, elegant but vulnerable. So much like her own grandmother had been in those final years. When Eleanor pulled away, James was still watching Sophia with that same intense focus. His dark brown eyes seemed to be cataloging every detail, as if committing her to memory. "You're working a shift right now," he observed. Sophia suddenly remembered where she was. The restaurant, her job. The table she was supposed to be clearing. She glanced around nervously, spotting her manager still hovering near the kitchen, his expression unreadable. "I should probably get back to work," she said reluctantly. "My manager will understand," James interrupted, then caught himself. His tone softened. "I mean, please join us." "Finish dinner with my mother and me." Sophia blinked in disbelief. What? "You defended my mother. You showed more integrity in 5 minutes than most people show in a lifetime. The least I can do is buy you dinner." Sophia hesitated, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes still watching their exchange. Dining with patrons wasn't just unusual, it was practically unheard of. Her manager would either understand or fire her on the spot, but something in James's expression stopped her from refusing immediately. It wasn't arrogance or expectation. It was something closer to hope, as if her acceptance mattered beyond simple politeness. "I don't know if—" she began. "Please," Eleanor interjected, taking Sophia's hand in both of hers. "It would mean so much to me. To us, after what you did, after how you stood up for me. Sharing a meal feels like the least we can offer." How could she refuse that? Sophia glanced toward her manager, who had been approached by James's assistant, the efficient Harrison who'd escorted Victoria out. After a brief, intense conversation involving what looked like a substantial folded bill changing hands, her manager nodded and actually smiled. Money, Sophia thought with resigned amusement, really does open every door. "Okay," she said finally, "but just give me 5 minutes to clean up." "Take your time," James said, and the warmth in his voice surprised her. Sophia hurried toward the staff bathroom, her mind racing. What was she doing? Sitting down to dinner with a billionaire and his mother? She caught her reflection in the mirror. Her bun was slightly askew, her uniform had a small stain from earlier, and exhaustion showed in the shadows under her eyes. She looked exactly like what she was, a working-class woman at the end of a long shift, but she also looked like someone who'd stood up for what was right, someone who'd defended a stranger at personal risk. And maybe that was worth more than a perfect appearance. Sophia fixed her bun, washed her face, and took a deep breath. When she returned to table 12, the setting had been transformed. A third place had been set with gleaming silverware and pristine china. A fresh arrangement of flowers adorned the center. James and Eleanor sat waiting, both watching her approach with expressions of genuine welcome. James stood as she arrived, an old-fashioned gesture that caught her off guard, and pulled out her chair. "Thank you for joining us." Sophia sat, feeling surreal. 3 hours ago, she'd been clearing tables and dodging impatient customers. Now she was dining with people whose net worth probably exceeded her hometown's entire annual budget. "I've taken the liberty of ordering the chef's tasting menu," James said, settling back into his seat. "Unless you have dietary restrictions?" "No restrictions," Sophia managed. "Though I should warn you, as a culinary school graduate, I'm going to be judging every dish." The joke landed perfectly. Eleanor laughed, a genuine sound of delight, and even James's stern features cracked into something approaching a smile. "I'd expect nothing less," he said. "In fact, I'd be disappointed if you didn't." A server appeared, Daniel, one of Sophia's co-workers, barely suppressing his shock at seeing her seated as a guest. He poured wine with professional efficiency, though his eyes kept darting to her with obvious questions. She'd have a lot to explain later. "So, Sophia Bennett," James said once the server had departed. "Culinary school graduate, dedicated granddaughter, defender of the vulnerable. What else should we know about you?" Sophia took a sip of wine, easily the most expensive thing she'd ever tasted, and considered the question. "Honestly, there's not much to tell. My life has been pretty straightforward. School, caregiving, more school, and now figuring out what comes next." "What do you want to come next?" Eleanor asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. It was such a simple question, but nobody had asked Sophia that in years. Everyone had assumed her path: culinary school, restaurant job, work her way up through the industry. Standard trajectory for someone with her background, but what did she actually want? "I want to create something meaningful," Sophia said slowly, the words forming as she spoke them. "Not just cook food, but create experiences, meals that bring people together, restaurants that feel like home, places where everyone, regardless of their bank account or social status, feels valued." James's attention sharpened. "That's ambitious." "Maybe," Sophia acknowledged. "But I've spent years in this industry. I've seen how it treats people, both staff and customers. There's room for something better, something more human." "I like that," Eleanor said softly. "Something more human. We could use more of that in the world." The first course arrived. a delicate arrangement of seasonal vegetables with herbs Sophia recognized from her culinary training. She took a bite, analyzing the flavors, the technique, the presentation. "The reduction is perfect," she murmured, almost to herself. "And they've balanced the acidity beautifully. Though I'd have added a touch more salt to bring out the sweetness of the carrots." James watched her with fascination. "You really do see food differently." "I see everything differently now," Sophia admitted. "Culinary school changes how you experience meals. It's like learning a new language. Suddenly you can read the story behind every dish." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, the tension of earlier dissolving into something warmer, easier. Then Eleanor spoke, her tone carefully casual. "James, dear, when was the last time you had a conversation this genuine with anyone you were dating?" James paused mid-bite, his expression freezing. Sophia felt heat rush to her cheeks. "Mother," James said warningly. But Eleanor simply smiled, utterly unrepentant. The question hung in the air like a challenge neither James nor Sophia knew how to answer. Sophia focused intently on her plate, suddenly fascinated by the artistic arrangement of vegetables. James cleared his throat, his composure cracking just slightly. "Mother," he repeated, his tone carrying a warning that Eleanor cheerfully ignored. "It's a fair question," the older woman said, dabbing her lips with her napkin. "You've dated dozens of women over the years. Beautiful women. Accomplished women. But how many of them would have defended a stranger the way Sophia did? How many would have risked anything for someone they didn't know?" James set down his fork with deliberate care. "We're not discussing my dating history at dinner." "Why not?" Eleanor's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Sophia already witnessed the spectacular end of your latest relationship. I think we're past pretending your romantic life isn't a topic of conversation." Sophia couldn't help herself. She laughed. The sound escaped before she could stop it, breaking the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. James looked at her, and something in his severe expression softened. "You find my humiliation amusing?" "I find your mother's honesty refreshing," Sophia corrected, still smiling. "She reminds me of my grandmother. No filter, just truth." "Your grandmother sounds wonderful," Eleanor said warmly. She was. Sophia's smile turned bittersweet. "She used to say that if you can't be honest with family, you can't be honest with anyone. Life's too short for polite lies." James studied Sophia with that intense focus again. "And what would your honest assessment be of what you witnessed tonight?" The question caught Sophia off guard. He actually wanted her opinion. Not polite platitudes, but genuine thoughts. She considered carefully before responding. "Honestly, I think you've been surrounding yourself with people who see you as an opportunity instead of a person. Victoria didn't love you. She loved what you represented. Access, status, security." James didn't flinch, but something flickered behind his eyes. "Recognition, perhaps. And you've let that happen," Sophia continued, her voice gentle but firm, "because surface-level relationships feel safer than real ones. If nobody gets close, nobody can truly hurt you." The silence that followed felt weighted with truth. Eleanor reached across the table, covering her son's hand with hers. "Out of the mouths of relative strangers?" "She's not wrong," James admitted quietly. "After my father died, I watched my mother struggle with grief. Real, devastating grief. I decided then that I'd never let myself feel that vulnerable. Casual relationships, clear boundaries, no real emotional investment. And how's that working out?" Sophia asked. James's laugh held no humor. "Tonight should answer that question. 8 months with someone I never truly knew. 8 months of my mother suffering in silence." "You weren't blind," Eleanor corrected. "You were protecting yourself." "There's a difference, maybe," James said. "But the cost was too high." Sophia felt her heart ache for this complicated man. Beneath the expensive suit and billionaire confidence was someone fundamentally lonely. Someone who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what connection felt like. "Real relationships are terrifying," Sophia offered. "They require vulnerability, trust, the willingness to be hurt. But they're also the only relationships worth having." James met her eyes, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. "Is that what you want? Real relationships? Real connection? Isn't that what everyone wants?" Sophia replied, "Deep down beneath all the pretense. Don't we all just want to be seen? Truly seen? And accepted anyway?" The moment stretched between them, charged with something Sophia couldn't quite name. Eleanor cleared her throat delicately. Well, this has taken a philosophical turn. Perhaps we should focus on the food. But neither James nor Sophia looked away from each other. Something had shifted, something neither of them fully understood yet. But it was undeniably there. The second course arrived, breaking the charged silence that had settled over the table. Sophia watched as Daniel placed the dish before her with exaggerated care, clearly dying to ask questions, but maintaining professional composure. She caught his eye and smiled slightly, a silent promise of, "I'll explain later." When the server departed, Eleanor spoke, her voice carefully casual. "Sophia, dear, you mentioned wanting to create something meaningful in the culinary world. Have you thought about what that might look like?" Sophia considered the question while cutting into the perfectly seared scallop. I want to create a space where food brings people together across all social lines. Where a billionaire and a dishwasher sit side by side and share the same experience. Where what matters isn't your bank account, but your openness to connection. That's ambitious, James said, and something in his tone had shifted. The cold businessman was gone, replaced by someone genuinely curious. Most restaurants in this city cater exclusively to one demographic or another. You're talking about bridging a significant divide. Maybe that's exactly what this city needs, Sophia replied. I've worked in enough high-end restaurants to see how isolating wealth can be. Everyone performing, nobody connecting. And I've worked in enough diners to see how community forms naturally when pretense isn't required. Eleanor reached across the table, covering Sophia's hand with her own. You remind me of someone I knew once, my late husband. James's father. He believed that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in relationships. In moments of genuine human connection, James's expression flickered, something vulnerable breaking through his careful control. Mother, he said quietly, you never talk about Dad. Because you never wanted to hear about him, Eleanor replied gently. You've spent 15 years building walls, darling, convincing yourself that emotional distance equals strength. That caring too much is weakness. The observation hung in the air, achingly accurate. Sophia felt like she was witnessing something intensely private. Yet Eleanor's hand remained on hers, anchoring her to the moment, including her in this family revelation. After your father died, Eleanor continued, her voice steady despite the emotion underneath, I watched you transform. You were 23, brilliant, driven, heartbroken. You decided that if loving someone meant risking that kind of pain again, you'd simply stop loving. Stop letting anyone close. James's jaw worked. This isn't appropriate dinner conversation? Eleanor smiled sadly. Perhaps not. But I've watched you date dozens of women who never challenged you, never truly saw you, never demanded you be more than the cold businessman you've become. And I stayed silent because I thought, eventually, you'd find your way back to yourself. She turned to Sophia, her eyes glistening. And then tonight, a young woman I've never met risked her job to defend me from cruelty. She stood up for a stranger because it was right, and I watched my son. Really watched someone, for the first time in years. Mother. James's voice carried a warning, but also something that sounded like hope. Eleanor stood, gathering her small clutch purse with deliberate movements. I'm suddenly quite tired. Think I'll call for my car. What? James half rose from his chair. But we haven't finished. You haven't finished, Eleanor corrected, her smile turning mischievous. But I've accomplished exactly what I came here to do. Sophia, dear, would you do an old woman a favor and keep my son company for the remainder of the meal? I'd hate for all this excellent food to go to waste. Sophia's heart hammered. Mrs. Eleanor, just Eleanor. The older woman leaned down, kissing Sophia's cheek and whispering too quietly for James to hear. Don't let him hide behind his walls, dear. He's worth the effort to reach. Then she was gone, moving through the restaurant with surprising speed for someone who'd just claimed exhaustion, leaving Sophia and James alone at the table. The silence stretched between them, loaded with everything unsaid. James cleared his throat. I apologize for my mother. She's interfering. She's loving, Sophia corrected softly. There's a difference. James met her eyes, and the vulnerability she glimpsed there made her breath catch. "You don't know me, Sophia. My mother has a tendency to romanticize, to see potential where there's only what?" Sophia challenged. "Only a man who dropped everything when he realized his mother was being hurt? Only someone willing to end an 8-month relationship in seconds when he discovered cruelty? Only a person capable of admitting he's been protecting himself?" "You heard all that," James said quietly, "every word. And you're not running?" Sophia laughed, surprising herself. "Running? James, I confronted your girlfriend in a crowded restaurant despite having no idea who any of you were. I'm not really the running type." Something shifted in his expression, the careful mask cracking to reveal genuine amusement. "No, I suppose you're not." The waiter appeared, discreetly clearing Eleanor's place setting. James ordered wine. Something expensive that Sophia suspected cost more than her monthly rent. But when it arrived, he raised his glass with unexpected simplicity. "To unlikely interventions," he said. "To standing up for what's right." Sophia countered. Their glasses touched with a soft chime, and something began. They talked for an hour, then another. The restaurant gradually emptied around them. Other diners departing into the night while Sophia and James remained, conversation flowing with unexpected ease. James told her about building his company from nothing, about sleepless nights and impossible decisions, about the weight of responsibility for thousands of employees. But he also talked about his father, about learning to sail on summer weekends, about a man who'd measured success in laughter shared rather than profits earned. "He died of a heart attack," James said quietly, swirling wine in his glass. "Completely unexpected. One moment he was teaching me about quarterly reports. The next he was gone. I was 23 and suddenly responsible for everything." "So you decided never to be vulnerable again," Sophia observed. James looked at her sharply. "That's reductive, but accurate." A long pause, then, "Yes, accurate." Sophia leaned forward, her voice gentle. "James, closing yourself off didn't protect you from pain. It just guaranteed you'd be alone in it." "And you?" James challenged. "You spent 7 years caring for dying grandparents. You postponed your entire life. Don't tell me you weren't protecting yourself too. Hiding behind duty instead of risking your own dreams." The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Sophia sat back, recognizing the truth in his words. Maybe we're both recovering from different versions of the same wound. Learning that caring for people doesn't have to mean losing yourself. James studied her with an intensity that made her acutely aware of every detail. The way candlelight reflected in his dark eyes, the slight softening of his usually stern features, the careful way he'd rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing surprisingly strong forearms. "You're different," he said finally. "From your usual type?" Sophia smiled. "I gathered that from Victoria's reaction, from anyone I've ever met." James's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "You don't want anything from me. My money, my connections, my status. None of it impresses you. Should it? Most people think so. I'm not most people." "No," James agreed, something warming in his expression. "You're absolutely not." The waiter appeared with dessert. Delicate constructions of chocolate and gold leaf that seemed almost too beautiful to disturb. But Sophia picked up her fork with culinary school precision, analyzing the technique even as she savored the taste. "Tell me your dream," James said suddenly. "Not the philosophy. The actual restaurant. What does it look like?" Sophia closed her eyes, letting the vision form. Small, maybe 40 seats. Open kitchen so diners can watch the creation process. Communal tables mixed with intimate corners. A menu that changes daily based on what's fresh, what's available, what feels right. Prices on a sliding scale. Pay what you can afford, no questions asked. "That's financially impossible," James observed. "Probably," Sophia agreed, opening her eyes. "But impossible things happen sometimes. Tonight proved that," James smiled. A real smile, unguarded and genuine. Fair point. 6 hours ago, I was dating someone I didn't love. Now I'm having the most honest conversation I've had in years. With a woman I just met. Is that what this is?" Sophia asked softly. "Honest?" Terrifyingly so. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and true. James reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. Not quite touching, but close enough that Sophia could feel the warmth of his skin. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't do this, whatever this is. Neither do I, Sophia confessed. But maybe that's okay. Maybe not knowing is part of the point. That's a very optimistic perspective. I'm a very optimistic person, I've noticed. James's fingers finally made contact. The gentlest brush against her knuckles. Sophia, would you have dinner with me again? Somewhere less dramatic? She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking if I can see you again. Without my mother orchestrating. Without public confrontations. Just us. Sophia turned her hand palm up, letting their fingers intertwine. Yes, I'd like that very much. The restaurant had closed around them without either noticing. Sophia looked up to find Daniel hovering diplomatically near the kitchen entrance, clearly torn between his duties as a server and his curiosity as her co-worker. The other staff members pretended to polish already spotless silverware while stealing glances at the unlikely couple still seated at table 12. James followed her gaze and smiled with self-deprecating awareness. I think we've overstayed our welcome. Technically, you're a paying customer, Sophia pointed out. They can't kick you out. But you're an employee who was supposed to finish her shift 3 hours ago. Sophia glanced at her watch. Nearly midnight. Her manager stood near the host stand looking bewildered but not angry. The woman caught Sophia's eye and made a subtle shooing gesture that clearly meant, Go, we've got this. I should, Sophia started. Let me drive you home, James offered immediately. It's late. I live in a small apartment in a neighborhood you've probably never visited, Sophia said carefully. Your car is worth more than my annual rent. I don't care about any of that, you should. Sophia's voice was gentle but firm. James, tonight was extraordinary, but we come from very different worlds. That matters, does it? James leaned forward, intensity returning to his features. You said yourself that true connection transcends social lines. Or does that philosophy only apply to restaurants? The challenge was fair and landed perfectly. Sophia felt her careful reservations crumbling. You're using my own words against me. I'm a good listener. James stood, extending his hand. Come on, let me at least walk you out. Sophia took his hand, letting him help her up. The simple gesture felt ridiculously formal, and somehow exactly right. As they moved toward the exit, Daniel intercepted them with Sophia's purse and jacket. So, her coworker said with barely contained glee, I'm guessing you have quite a story to tell at tomorrow's shift. Daniel, Sophia warned. Just saying. He grinned unrepentantly. This is already legendary. Sophia Bennett, the waitress who defended a billionaire's mother and ended up, he gestured meaningfully at their still clasped hands, ended up having dinner, Sophia finished firmly. That's all. Right, just dinner. With James Whitmore. For 4 hours, after his very public breakup. Daniel's expression turned sincere. But seriously, Soph, I'm happy for you. You deserve something good. James's car was exactly what Sophia expected. Sleek black, probably German. But when the driver opened the door, James waved him off. I'll drive tonight, Harrison. Take the evening off, sir? The driver looked genuinely shocked. I'd like some privacy. James's tone was kind but definite. I'll text when I need you tomorrow. Once settled in the passenger seat, Sophia ran her hand over the leather interior with appreciation. This is intimidating. It's just a car. It's a car that costs more than most people's houses. Sophia. James turned to face her, the engine still idle. I know there's a wealth gap between us. I'm not naive about what that means or how it complicates things. But tonight, you didn't see my money. You saw me. Can we start there? The vulnerability in his voice made her defenses waver. Where do you live? James asked. Sophia gave him the address. A modest building in a working-class neighborhood 20 minutes away. James programmed it into the navigation without comment or judgment. They drove through the city in comfortable silence, streetlights painting patterns across the windshield. Sophia watched James drive. His movements confident but not showy, his attention focused on the road rather than on impressing her. I've been thinking, James said as they crossed into her neighborhood. About what you said earlier. About creating spaces where connection matters more than status. And I own several commercial properties sitting vacant. Buildings I bought years ago as investments but never developed. Prime locations, waiting for the right concept. Sophia's breath caught. James, if you're about to offer me something because you feel obligated, I'm not. He pulled up to her building, putting the car in park and turning to face her fully. I'm offering because your vision is brilliant, because this city needs what you described, and because I'd like to be part of something meaningful again, something that matters beyond quarterly profits. You barely know me. I know you risked your job to defend my mother. I know you postponed your dreams for 7 years to care for dying grandparents. I know you see potential in people, including me. James's hand found hers again. That's enough for now. Sophia sat in the leather seat, her heart hammering, her mind racing through implications and possibilities and the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, this impossible night could become something real. One condition, she said finally, anything. This isn't charity. If we do this, if we even explore this, it's a partnership. Equal investment, equal say, equal risk. James smiled, slow and genuine. Deal? He walked her to her building's entrance, the billionaire CEO in his expensive suit standing on cracked sidewalk under flickering streetlights. The contrast should have been absurd, but somehow it felt right. Good night, Sophia, James said softly. Good night, James. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Sophia didn't move, didn't breathe. As his lips brushed her cheek with gentle reverence, then he was gone, driving away into the night, leaving Sophia standing in the doorway, touching her cheek and believing in impossible things. 3 months later, Sophia stood in the empty shell of what would become her restaurant. The space was perfect. Exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, windows that flooded the room with natural light. James had been true to his word. Equal partnership, equal investment, no strings attached, though the strings, she reflected with a smile, had developed naturally anyway. You're smiling, James observed, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Good sign. Very good sign. Sophia leaned back against him, surveying their joint creation. The contractors say we can open in 6 weeks. Your dream becoming real. Our dream, Sophia corrected. You're as invested in this as I am. James pressed a kiss to her temple. I'm invested in you. The restaurant is just a bonus. They stood together in comfortable silence, both imagining what the space would become. Tables filled with diverse diners, kitchen sounds creating symphony, connection happening naturally across all social boundaries. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, stylish as always in a cream coat and pearls. I'm not interrupting, am I? Never, Sophia said warmly, disentangling from James to embrace the older woman. Over the past 3 months, Eleanor had become part mentor, part friend, part surrogate grandmother. I brought mock-ups for the menu design, Eleanor said, producing elegant folders. Unless you think I'm being too interfering? You're being perfect, Sophia assured her. As always, James watched them together. His mother and the woman who'd somehow broken through 15 years of carefully constructed walls. The transformation hadn't been easy. There'd been arguments about vulnerability, conversations about trust, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But Sophia had been patient, persistent, present, and slowly, impossibly, James had learned to open again. I have news, Eleanor announced, her eyes twinkling. The Chronicle wants to do a feature story about the restaurant and about how it came to be. They want to write about the night at Belmont's, James said flatly. They want to write about transformation, Eleanor corrected, about a waitress who stood up for what was right, about a billionaire who learned vulnerability isn't weakness, about creating something meaningful from an unlikely beginning. Sophia met James's eyes. What do you think? I think... James moved to stand beside her, taking her hand. I think our story is worth sharing. If you're comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with anything, as long as we're in it together. Eleanor beamed, looking between them with obvious satisfaction. You know, that night at the restaurant, I knew immediately. The way my son looked at you, Sophia, like he was seeing someone for the first time in years. Mother, James said, but his tone was affectionate rather than warning. Let an old woman have her romantic moment, Eleanor laughed. I endured 8 months of Victoria. I've earned this. They stayed in the empty restaurant until sunset painted the walls golden, planning, dreaming, building something that mattered. Not just a business, but a testament to the idea that connection transcends circumstance. That night, walking Sophia back to her apartment, James stopped under a streetlight. I love you, he said simply. I should have said it weeks ago. Sophia's heart expanded. I love you too. Though I figured that was obvious. Nothing between us has been obvious. James pulled her close. But everything has been right, he kissed her then. Not the gentle brush from their first night, but something deeper. A promise. A beginning. Above them, city lights blazed against darkening sky. And somewhere, in a universe that occasionally allows impossible things, a story that began with a confrontation in an elegant restaurant continued its transformation into something beautiful, something real, something worth defending. Loved this story? Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our tales. Drop a like if Sophia inspired you, and comment what you thought about James and Victoria's ending. Did he make the right choice? Your support means everything to us.